Long before the poems, this man killed several men with his own hand. So wrote a man who knew him. 1 billion people can recite his verses today. China worships him as the god of poetry. His name was Libai, the most dangerous poet who ever lived. But the most shocking part of his story isn't the killing. It's the one thing this immortal chased his whole life and never truly held. Not gold, he burned through fortunes. Not fame, the emperor knew his name. Something smaller, something ordinary men were handed every day. A government job. This is the story of how heaven's greatest poet died still knocking on that door. 701 AD. By the prevailing account, he is born at the empire's far western edge, a Silk Road outpost in what is now Kyrgyzstan. A boy is born into a merchant caravan family. Money, plenty, silk, jade, wine, the family trades it all. When he is about 5, the family moves deep into China, Sichuan, and the boy turns out to be a monster. He devours the classics at 10, writes poetry that stuns grown scholars. A talent, one admirer swore, seen once in 500 years. In Tang, China, talent had one great ladder, the imperial examination. Pass it, and even a farmer's son could rise to run the empire. For every ambitious boy in the empire who could hold a brush, that exam was the whole sky. But Tang law barred certain men from the examination hall. Above all, 2 kinds: the sons of criminals and the sons of merchants. Libai, by most accounts, checked both boxes. His family, exiled to the frontier for a crime, one history says, and his father, a man who slipped back into China illegally and lived by trade. No registry, no clan record, no exam, ever. By the reading most of China accepts today, the most talented boy in the empire was locked out of it, at birth, by paperwork. So the boy did what barred geniuses do. He picked up a sword. 15, obsessed with the sword, calling on lords and governors. His words. 20, several men down, a knight-errant with a poet's hands. 10 steps, 1 man slain, 1,000 miles, no trace left behind. He wrote that dreaming of the perfect night. Mid-20s, he leaves Sichuan with a sword and a fortune. His words, I carried my blade far from home and left my parents for distant lands. In Yangzhou, he burns through over 300,000 cash inside a year, his own accounting. It bought him friends, it bought him a name, because there was still one back door into government. Get famous enough, and a great man might recommend you. So began the begging letters, to governors, to generals, to anyone with a seal. To one he wrote, I don't need a fief of 10,000 households, I only ask to meet you once. The doors stayed shut. A decade of couch surfing across the empire, a marriage into a fallen minister's family, still no post. But the poems were detonating. In the capital, the most famous old poet alive read 1 page of Libai and gasped, You are an immortal, banished from heaven. He traded the golden tortoise off his own belt, a badge of high office, for wine, and drank with him. The banished immortal, the name stuck. All of Chang'an now knew the drunk genius the empire refused to hire, a legend, unemployed. In 742, the miracle. One account says a princess who loved his poems whispered upward. However it happened, an imperial summons came down. Picture it. The man barred from the servants' entrance of government, summoned through the front gate of heaven by the Son of Heaven himself. Libai was 41. He laughed all the way out of his front door and wrote, Laughing at the sky, I stride out through my gate. Was a man like me ever meant for the weeds? A lifetime of locked doors, and suddenly the Emperor of China is seasoning the soup at his table with his own hands. The dream job at last? Look closer at the title, Han Lin Attendant, not minister, not magistrate, not even clerk. Court poet, a songbird in a golden cage. His job, be brilliant at parties. When the emperor wanted verses for his beloved consort in the gardens, Libai was fetched, famously dead drunk, to improvise. They kept finding him drunk. He kept delivering masterpieces, verses tossed off between cups that scholars would study for 1,000 years. The court applauded the genius. The genius started to understand he wasn't a statesman here, he was entertainment. So the caged immortal began to bite. The story goes, at a banquet, roaring drunk, he stretched out a leg and ordered Gao Li, the most powerful eunuch in the empire, to kneel down and pull off his boots in front of the court. A servant's chore, forced on the emperor's favorite by a poet with no rank at all. The court never forgave him. The whispers started. Within 2 years, the palace paid him in gold to leave. He had touched the dream with his fingertips, and it had examined him and tossed him back. Along the way, he met a young fan named Du Fu, one day to be crowned China's other greatest poet. That meeting is a story for its own episode. A jug of wine, 100 poems. That was the legend. Here's the darker read. The wine wasn't fuel, it was anesthesia. What does a genius do when the only door he ever wanted is welded shut? Twice. He declares war on the door. Heaven made a talent like me. It must be for something. Scatter 1,000 gold coins, they'll come back. School books teach that line as confidence. Listen again. It's a rejected man screaming at the sky. Bells, drums, banquets, jade, worthless. Let me just stay drunk and never sober up. That's not swagger. That's a resignation letter addressed to reality. He drank with a new companion now, the only one who never rejected him, never left, and never judged. The moon. I raise my cup and invite the moon. With my shadow we make three. The most beautiful loneliness ever written. The more the empire refused the official, the greater the immortal grew. Rejection was distilling him into a god. Then in 755, the sky fell. The An Lushan rebellion set the empire on fire, the war that, if the records are right, erased 1/6 of the world. Chang'an fell. The emperor fled. The empire shattered into desperate courts, each hunting for legitimacy, and one of them wanted a celebrity. Prince Yong, the emperor's 16th son, raising a fleet on the Yangtze. He sent envoys up the mountain for the most famous poet alive. Libai himself swore. The letters came 3 times. Libai was 55, in mountain retirement, still aching for the one thing. A prince, a commission, a real post, at last. He sailed with the fleet singing about becoming the empire's savior minister, settling the barbarian dust with a smile. One problem. The new emperor, the prince's own brother, ordered the fleet back. The prince refused. That made it officially a rebellion. The prince was crushed within weeks, and the poet who sang for him woke up in a cell in Shenyang as a traitor. The charge, treason. Some accounts say the first sentence was death. Powerful friends scrambled to save him. The story goes, one great general offered his own rank as ransom. The verdict that stuck, exile to Yelang, the far malarial end of the map. Add up the ledger, barred at birth, rejected for decades, hired as a toy, fired, now a convicted traitor. He was 57 years old. Halfway up the Yangtze Gorges, word overtook him, a general amnesty. He was free. He turned back down the river, and tradition ties that morning to the giddiest 4 lines in the Chinese language. At dawn I left the city of White Emperor in clouds of glowing rose. 1,000 miles to Jiangling, done in a single day. On both banks the gibbons cry on, but my light little boat has already slipped past 10,000 mountains. Read those lines knowing the man, a lifetime of walls behind him, and for one morning on that river, none of it could catch him. Did he finally rest? 2 years later, pushing 60, a loyalist army was marching to crush the last rebels. The old man packed his sword and volunteered. One last chance at a soldier's rank. One last knock on the door. His body gave out halfway there. He turned back, sick, spent, 60 years old, still without a post. He washed up at a relative's house in Dangtu on the Yangtze. Sick, broke, finished. His deathbed poem casts himself as a great rock, the giant bird of legend, snapped mid-flight in the middle of heaven. Even dying, the metaphor is the same, a wingspan built for heaven, with nowhere on earth to perch. History says he died in bed, sick, handing his manuscripts to his uncle. But China refused that ending. The legend says, one night on the river, drunk, alone, he looked down and saw the moon shining in the black water. The friend who never rejected him, within arm's reach at last. And he reached out to embrace it. Libai spent his whole life drinking with the moon. That night, the legend swears, the moon finally drank him. Now the epilogue the empire never saw coming. The grandees who shut him out? You would need a specialist to name one today. The unemployable drunk? 1 billion people carry his poems by heart, 13 centuries later. The empire refused him a desk, so heaven gave him a throne. Welcome to the Dragon Files. Subscribe for more.